Season 5 of the podcast is here. Thanks so much to our title sponsor, Visit Bloomington. We would not be here without them. Check them out, visitbloomington.com.
Hey, say, honey, let's go out to eat. Relieve our culinary duties. With all these restaurants to sweep us off our feet, they're bound to turn us into foodies. No dishes, no dishes, no dishes. We'll have a bottle of wine for lights and have a good time. No dishes, no dishes.
All right. Well, hey, we're back for another episode of the No Dishes podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Davis, and we are here with, I don't know if mayor-to-be, potentially, Kerry Thomson. Kerry, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. Really appreciate it.
Of course. So you just won the Democratic nomination for to be mayor of Bloomington. What are the next steps for that? The general in November, is that it?
The general in November is the next step. So I'm encouraging people to get out there and vote, not just for me, but we have a slate of city council members that will be elected this fall. And the MCCSC has a really important referendum on the ballot. And so it's really critical that people get to the polls.
So what is that referendum that's so important to our community?
Yeah, the referendum is to fund free pre-K for all 4-year-olds in our community. And this is really critically important. It's an equity issue, really, because if we can get free pre-K, that means every family gets to send their child for free for a full day of school. And it also frees up some of the daycare spots that we so desperately need in our community. You know, nationally, there's a daycare shortage. And so as we look at how we support economic development and growth in our community, this gets people back to work and it puts more money in people's pockets because they're not paying for that extra year of daycare.
Yeah, well, I know that's huge. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, I was talking to some of our staff at the Moose. I didn't realize how expensive daycare is.
Oh, it's astronomically expensive, more than people's mortgage payments frequently.
Yeah, they were like, it's like $250 a week per child. I'm like, what? Like, yes. I thought that when they said $250, it was for that month. And I'm so ignorant to what that reality is. So, I mean, that does sound incredibly important so people can have the freedom to go to work and know that their kid is taken care of.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, congrats on the victory. I don't know if you call it that.
Thank you. Well, certainly the primary was a victory. It, I was running against 2 really gifted leaders, and I feel really fortunate to have won the nomination.
Yeah, I went to the event at Franklin Hall that the chamber put on, where it was you and Dawn and Susan.
Yes.
And, I was really kind of undecided going into that, but I thought it was very eye-opening that maybe an hour that it was, just to really get to know the individuals as candidates and just how they handled. I feel like that was a fairly pressure-packed situation. So many local business leaders in one place.
Right.
But I thought you did a fantastic job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Not that you needed money. You're like, I know.
Well, by then I think we were pretty well rehearsed because I think we had total. We definitely had more than 10 forums and debates, and I think we had something in the range of 15 to 18 total. So we should have been, fairly good at it by then.
Well, you could tell the familiarity you had with each other and maybe what the other ones were going to say. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic to see.
It was interesting. Huh?
So how do you, Bloomington's always been such a Democratic stronghold. How do you balance the reality with not being like overly presumptive of, like if we're like, oh, Kerry's our next mayor, well, there's still the general to go. What kind of balance does that take for you?
Well, there's still a general, and I'm aware that more than 50% of the voters didn't vote for me. It was a 3-way primary, and so I still have a lot of work to do to listen and make sure that I am connecting with people who may not have supported me in the primary, and really build bridges to let them know that I still will represent them. if I'm elected in November. And right now it's uncontested. So it's less, I'm less concerned about winning votes as I am really genuinely listening to people and ensuring that any plans that the administration puts into place do our best to meet as many needs and desires of our community as possible.
That's great. The last thing I'll ask about the Democratic primary, what do you think it is that maybe resonated with voters that set you apart that you hope to build on?
I think that people really are ready for a change. Our government has been operating the same way for a while now, and I was the only one from outside of government who really said, government should be pivoting, and we should be working for the people and co-creating solutions for our challenges with the people who live here, and honoring the fact that we have a lot of talent in Bloomington, and we don't need to get our big ideas and our plans for executing them from consultants out of town. We have plenty of people here that can help us create solutions. We may need consultants eventually to implement some ideas, but I think that the solutions and the groundwork should be laid here in Bloomington.
That's great. That's so refreshing to hear, because I know one of the issues a lot of people have had with the Hamilton administration is just being like my way or the highway, and just that's great to just be like, hey, let's get everyone involved. We all have a say in just how we can work together, moving forward as a community.
Yes, and I think I want to give credit to the Hamilton administration. They've gotten a lot of things done during this administration. I just think it's time to strike a balance of listening first and then implementing.
That's great. Now, you mentioned being an outsider. I know a lot of your past history that I was aware of was with Habitat for Humanity.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about your work in that role?
And Habitat has a long history with the chocolate mousse.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you knew our long history.
I'm always the one fielding any donations or any of that stuff that goes. Yeah, it's such a great organization, so we're happy to do it.
Doran May picked me up for my interview at the airport when I came to interview with Habitat here in 1996.
Wow, I had no idea. That's incredible.
Yes, he was on the board, and they supplied ice for every Habitat build from the very, very beginning of Habitat here in Monroe County. So,
oh man, well I thought you were just talking about more recently.
No,
so there's so much
that
predates me.
Yeah,
okay.
Really, chocolate mousse has been foundational to Habitat for Humanity.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, I'm glad that we're trying to do a small part to uphold that tradition.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for continuing that support.
Of course. Well, we just had Doran and Tim on.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so they're going to be in the same season. They'll probably be coming out a week before you, a week after.
That's great.
But Doran, when I started at the old stand 9.5 years ago, was our landlord, so I got to see him all the time.
Right.
And I've known that almost a decade at the Chocolate Mousse. I've known a lot about the history, but I'm still like, man, if I have the opportunity to sit down with Doran and Tim and just pick their brains.
Yes.
And I think other people are going to be really excited to hear their story too. So that's awesome.
Right.
I love to hear that.
Yeah. So, before I even really knew much about Bloomington, I was tied in with the Chocolate Mousse. But I came here I was raised outside of Washington D.C. and after college I rode my bicycle from San Francisco to D.C. and en route, and I really thought, I hadn't been west of the Mississippi much, and I thought, I'm going to go on this trip, and I'm going back to a Habitat job in Virginia, but I probably am going to figure out where I want to live ultimately, because I have a real sense of adventure and love doing outdoor activities, and so I frankly thought the Rocky Mountains were going to call to me, and I got there, and they were beautiful and fine, but they didn't really feel like home. But I got to Bloomington, Indiana, and I was shocked. But we were here for 36 hours, and by the time I rode out of town, I said, I'm moving back here.
Wow.
I'm going to find a path to Bloomington, Indiana. So I watched the electronic bulletin board for Habitat jobs, and it took almost 2 years from the time I first rode through to the time I moved here. But I finally did it. Didn't look back.
What a cool story. What caused you to make that trek in the first place? Like cross country on your bike, like there's got to be a story behind that.
Really, I mean, the story really is what an incredible way to see the country.
Yeah.
And what other time in your life are you going to have 10 weeks that you could possibly take an adventure like this? Right when you graduate from college, right? And so I committed to doing it before I had a job lined up with Habitat. I actually thought I was going to go to grad school until the local director in Virginia said, "Why are you going to grad school? Stay here and work for us." So I committed to do this ride and told that affiliate that I would, I'd work for them, but I needed to ride my bike across the country first. So
Priorities, right?
I had priorities.
Well, you answered my other question, which is how long does that take? So 10 weeks.
Yeah, we did it in 10 weeks. There's a Dave Tanner who he passed away maybe 2 years ago now, but for a long time he was the swim coach at Bloomington North. Dave Tanner did the Race Across America, where you ride from LA to New York, and I think he did that in like 10 days.
Whoa.
And that race comes through here every year, but we were on a much slower pace, and it was great. I met an incredible number of people along the way. Riding your bicycle, especially in the places that we sometimes had to ride our bicycles, people would stop us at gas stations when we were getting an ice cream or whatever we were stopping for and say, "What on earth are you doing?" and so we learned a lot of people's stories. We learned a lot about small town America, big city America, and it was really a critical part of my education.
So when you say was it just one other riding partner, or was it a group of you?
We were a group. We went with an organization called Bike Aid, which no longer exists, but we were raising funding for sustainable development projects. We did fundraising ahead of time, and then we stayed on a lot of farms across the country. We camped, and sometimes in church basements or at YMCAs and things like that. So we met a bunch of people, and everywhere we went, we tried to set up some kind of community meeting so we could learn what was happening in each of the communities.
Wow, that's such a cool opportunity. The fact that you got to do that like when you're young, before you really are getting planted in somewhere, and just the odds that route went through Bloomington.
I know, and I'd never heard of Bloomington, Indiana before.
Yeah.
So we stayed in the basement of First Presbyterian Church, and they had a VCR. And we went down to the Monroe County Library because Dave Tanner came to talk to us about his race, and so we learned about breaking away, and we borrowed the VHS tape from Monroe County Public Library of breaking away and watched it that night.
I mean, if that's not the ultimate, biking across America, watching Breaking Away while you're in Bloomington.
Who wouldn't want to live here?
No, yeah, exactly.
Right?
I was like, that's had to have gotten you a hook, line, and sinker. Obviously, it did.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, since we're talking about food today, I ate at the Laughing Planet.
Oh,
during that
R.I.P.
trip.
Yeah.
R.I.P. indeed, and that was another big selling point.
That's how it was for another one of my buddies that moved down here around when I did.
Really?
That was one of the places before I lived here. I'd always look forward to going to Laughing Planet, Buffalo's, and Upland.
Yes.
And it was just like, there wasn't anything really like that in Indy.
Right.
And so it's, man, I hadn't thought about them in a while. So I just got really sad.
I should have worn my Bad Knees t-shirt that says, "I still miss the Laughing Planet." Had I known there was video, I would wear it just to tip my hat to Bob Costello and tease him a little bit.
Yeah. No, he needs teased.
That's right.
Well, Bob's a biker too, isn't he?
He's much faster than I am. Yeah.
Well, that's no surprise. He's got quite a few things in place between Soma's and Village Delis, and I feel like you got to get around quickly.
That's right. That's right.
All that happen.
Yeah.
So how Dorn picks you up for your interview to come down here for Habitat for Humanity. Right. Did you come right in as the executive director? Was that what the role was for?
Oh, no. I was like 22 years old or something.
Yeah.
You can cut all of this story out if you want, but I'll try to make it short. I had this dream to move to Bloomington, and so I applied for this job. It was for an executive director job, and they called me and said, "Well, we want to interview you." And I said, "Oh, you don't understand. I can't do that job." I just wanted to move to Bloomington and work for Habitat, but I'm basically still a kid, and I know how to run a job site, but that's about it. And they said, well, that's nice, but we'd still like to interview you. So we did a phone interview, and they called me back and they said, okay, now we're going to fly you out for a real interview. And I said, no, you don't understand. I really can't do this job. And they said, that's great, but we've narrowed it down to 3 applicants out of over 90, and you're one of them. We want you to come interview. Oh, you're wasting Habitat's money. Don't do that. So they convinced me to come interview. And of course, after I got to spend 2 days with Habitat homeowner families and the board and meeting more of the Bloomington community, then I totally wanted the job. And I didn't really care that I didn't really know how to do it. I just figured I could figure it out. And the board president said, we don't know yet, but I think it's, you got a better than 50% chance. So why don't you sign a lease before you leave, and I'll call you. So he called me 2 days later and he said, it's the hardest call I've ever had to make, but we're not going to give you this job.
Oh, wow.
And I was heartbroken. Like I really thought, oh, I'm supposed to go to Bloomington. Yeah. This is where I'm supposed to be. And so I had been interviewing with Habitat International for another job. And so I called them and said, okay, I'll take this other job. And I went on a special projects team moving all around the country running Habitat projects. And about 6 months later, that same board president called. I was sitting at my desk at Twin Cities Habitat in Minnesota. It was my first day on that job. And the phone rings and I pick it up and it's this board president. And he said, well, we made a terrible mistake. Will you come? And I said, what? I just started this other thing. So I ended up coming about 6 months later. I was doing a 6-month gig in Twin Cities, and it's really just been fantastic ever since.
I think that's a great story. I think you undersold it. Yeah.
Well, it is a story about finding the next right piece of your path. And I'm so glad that year that I didn't come to Bloomington, it gave me an incredible amount of experience.
That's what I was going to ask. I was like, I feel like that's one of those where you look back on it. It's like, well, it worked out for a reason. I was able to go see all these places, and, that probably made you a lot better for the role.
Yes. And I still, I told them at that time, I said, now I really know I don't want to do an executive director job, and I don't want to commit to you long term. So I'll come for 6 months. You can pay me $40 a week and find me a free place to stay. Sort of no commitment, right? And I'll run this blitz build that you want me to run. And then if you don't like me or I don't really like Bloomington, then we can just part ways and no hard feelings. Nice. And so obviously I loved it here as much as I thought I would. And eventually I became the CEO.
Yeah. Well, still very smart to set yourself up for that. Because even when you're like, oh, I visited this place, it's amazing. Right. It's a little different once you move there and really dig in. So I feel like that was smart that you set that up, but I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, it was a great no pressure move.
The Bloomington Town Planner is a community calendar owned and published by local residents John and Sharon Martin. Mailed out to Bloomington homes in December of each year, it features school schedules and community events. And don't forget the coupons at the bottom of the calendar. They'll save you money and help you decide on the next restaurant or retailer to check out here in the Bloomington area. Town Planner also has an online calendar which will be found at townplanner.com. Make sure to sign up for their weekly e-newsletter so you can stay on top of all the fun events going on around town. So that was 97. Is that when you started?
97 was when I started. Yes.
Moved. And then, so how long did you end up being with Habitat? I mean, it was
20 years. Yeah. 20 years here, and I was with Habitat in some form or another. Since 1991. So a long time.
What were some of the things you were able to accomplish over those 2 decades at Habitat?
Well, we went from building one house a year to building between 10 and 12. Wow. And importantly, we really pivoted how we did Habitat, from really looking at, okay, we're going to get you into a house and offer you an opportunity to buy this house, to how do we really end the cycle of poverty for this family who is working so hard to buy this house. And when we go into a neighborhood and build a home, how are we also impacting that neighborhood in a beneficial way? How are we bringing people together? How are we maybe looking at doing some home repairs in the surrounding neighborhood, et cetera? And Habitat during my tenure became the largest private home developer in the county for about my last 9 years.
Wow.
So we learned how to build neighborhoods. And, a lot of people think development's just sort of a plug and play. Being a developer it's very complicated, and the learning curve was steep, especially for a nonprofit. But we built 2 neighborhoods during my tenure, and then bought the land for a 3rd neighborhood, which they're currently building. That one's called Osage Place, and that's off of Rogers and Rockport.
Okay,
near Thompson Park.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Fitting. Yeah, I guess.
That's right. Thompson Park has nothing to do with me, although that Thompson Park also does not have a P in it, just like my name.
Oh, okay. It's very confusing.
It's very confusing, but it's not mine.
I have a couple friends who just did the Women Who Build.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I always have a couple every year that participate, and it's such a cool thing. And they've all, the 2 that participated this year, I haven't talked to them at all, but in the years past, always talk about what a great experience it is for them. Yeah,
Women Build is just an incredible, it's an incredible team building experience. It's an incredible community building experience. And there's plenty of men who've never built a house too. And I frequently wish we could build that environment every Saturday at Habitat, where it's okay to say, I have no idea how to do this.
Yeah.
Show me. Because it's such a great camaraderie.
I remembered when we first moved to Indiana when I was 4. My dad was a pastor at a church in Anderson.
Oh, nice.
And we were involved helping with a Habitat for Humanity house in Alexandria. And it was like, I don't know why, I was very young, but I still just remember, like, it was just weird seeing all these people that you knew weren't builders,
right? All
like kind of doing their part. But it was just, it was a very interesting sense of camaraderie and just all working towards a bigger goal.
Right.
So at what point did you say you were done with, nonprofit work, Habitat for Humanity, and be like, I want to get into, I don't want to say politics, but do something more, or maybe not more, but different.
Yeah, well, I knew that, my husband had a sabbatical year opportunity, and I knew it would probably be good for Habitat and for me to have some new blood,
right.
Have some fresh ideas. It had really become to the point where, if I was out in town, people would say, oh, have you met Kerry Thomson? She is Habitat, which I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
There were 5,000 people volunteering a year. I was the CEO, but I was a very small part of what was really happening. So I knew, I might like to try some other things. I had ideas about how can I take what I've learned at Habitat and apply it more globally in the community, and how can we get a community that really works with each other, and where the sum of all of our gifts coming together is greater than any part. Right. So we spent a year in Germany for my husband's sabbatical year, which also was no small feat. 4 kids and 2 dogs moving across the ocean for a year. But while I was there, the Center for Rural Engagement started and at Indiana University, and I decided to come back and work for the center. And that has really given me a much bigger vision for what is possible when we allow community leaders to really bring their ideas forward and implement them. And the center really works to help rural communities thrive by focusing on letting community-initiated ideas come to the forefront in an asset-based model, and then partnering community leaders or emerging community leaders is frequently what happens with faculty and students that do research, engaged teaching, and service. Now we're in about 85 different municipalities.
Oh, wow.
Throughout the state, yeah.
Now, I might be showing how ignorant I am to things. Can you explain what an asset-based model is?
Yeah, so instead of saying, what are all the problems you want fixed, we say, what does your community have going for it? And so we look at the assets that are already there, and how do we really accentuate those assets? How do we use them to solve problems? Because every community also has problems. And how do we really piece those together so that that we are focused on the community's unique story and really growing those assets. So, you can think of it as as an individual, if I want to get better, instead of looking at, oh my gosh, I wish I were better at small talk. It's really hard to be a politician if you're bad at small talk. Instead of that, I can look at the things I am good at and really grow those. So you're really good at connecting people. Well, why don't you work on connecting people and see what grows out of that? Well, we can grow an organization. We can grow different businesses. We can make some things happen in the community. And then small talk becomes really pretty small.
Right. Yeah. I think that's such a common sense approach.
Yeah.
Just like, what are you good at? And what are all these individuals in the community good at? What's Bloomington as a whole good at?
Right.
Just use that to your advantage.
And I think that's something that we really need to focus on in Bloomington. We can look at all the things that other communities may have, or we can look back and say, well, this is what we were 30 years ago. And gosh, I miss that little funky Bloomington, right?
Right.
Or we can say, this is what we're uniquely good at. Let's really commit to being excellent at these things and let those things grow. Because if we try to be what, every other college town is, what some bigger city is, we'll just get to be sort of nothing unique. Nobody's ever going to ride their bike through here and say, wow, this place is exceptional. It's different from any other place.
Yeah, they're trying too hard to be. Yeah.
Right. So we have to be exceptionally Bloomington. And I'm really excited about what is emerging and what will continue to emerge so that we can make sure that we're doing that.
I love that. What do you see as Bloomington's biggest assets?
Oh, boy. Well, you can look at the obvious ones, but it would be fun to do a real asset mapping exercise with the community more broadly. The very obvious ones are the university, right? Our arts culture is one of them. The food scene is really pretty amazing.
Yeah.
We have a great music scene, and it's emerging too. We're getting a better music scene, and now we have businesses anchored in music that are really growing here. We of course have biofarm and biotech, and more. I think we're being known as part of the defense corridor here, especially with I-69 connecting us so closely to Crane and what's happening at Westgate. Bloomington has to be really aware that we're part of a bigger region. And I think for years and years, we have sort of thought we're so exceptional, we don't have to acknowledge the rest of the counties and how we play in the region. I think it actually would be a great benefit to us to say, we welcome all of these Crane employees and the Westgate employees, and we want some of them at least to call Bloomington home. And there's a real clear connection between what's happening, especially at Luddy, and what's going to happen down at Westgate. And so, I think the university's done an incredible job of formulating the 2030 plan. And if Bloomington really wants to be something exceptional, one of the assets that we can really play with is, how do we look at students as more than just somebody who comes here for 4 years, right?
Absolutely.
They're not just part of our economy. They are these bright minds, and they have ideas, and we may be able to keep more of them here after graduation. But I think so many times, again, with an asset-based approach, so many times, instead of looking at the assets that come with the students, we look at, well, now we can't park anywhere, and we can't get a reservation to eat anywhere, and the traffic's gotten bad. Well, what else is there, right?
Right.
Well, there are now going to be thousands of interns looking for a way to learn about life in real world business and real world nonprofit world. And so how do we really leverage that for the good of our community?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many pros. It always kills me anytime you look at the comments on a Herald Times article on Facebook or something. It's just like, we don't need new apartments, or we do need this, and it's like, I mean, I agree on some of it, but like, there's all these pros that come with this too, and like, we just stop building. That's not going to be good for anybody. So I think that's great to look at, like, what do these students bring other than, in some minds, just headaches, you know?
Right.
And I never would have came down to Bloomington or stayed here if it wasn't for the university. So I always try to keep that perspective that, like, hey, that's what brought me down here. That's what brought my friends down here. And
that's right.
A lot of the culinary scene wouldn't be what it is without the university. All the Jacobs School students starting bands, Duran Jones and the Indications, they're going on to do great things, and they're all Jacobs School students. The Main Squeeze, there's Russian Recording here in town.
Right.
Who just had their, I think, 20th anniversary.
Right.
And it's and then what? Jaguar. I mean, they had Bon Iver. Just really, really cool. And I love to hear you talk about those things, because in the work that I've done with Visit Bloomington, we've done those Thursday summer concert series that went so well, and had Molly Tuttle.
Tuttle, what a gift!
Yeah,
right?
I know. Yeah,
she was awesome.
Just amazing. Well, and it was like 100 degrees out, and
right.
there was still maybe a couple thousand people that turned out. So that was really great. And then a good friend I grew up with, Chris Dollar, played in the Hen House Prowlers out of Chicago, who opened.
Yes.
So it was really cool, because I've always talked to him like, dude, we need to have Hen House at a Food Truck Friday.
Yeah.
But they're pretty big. So to have them come and play Switchyard Park through a different capacity was just really cool to see that. And they're so talented. And it just makes me, I don't know, I really like that, the assets you listed. I mean, they're true, and we need to embrace those and see how we can maximize those. And that's what we're trying to do here at No Dishes.
That's right.
Talk about all the great culinary, So can we go back to before, just kind of where you were raised, pre-Bloomington, Kerry Thomson?
Mm-hmm.
Where were you raised? Well, your upbringing, and then what'd you go to school for?
Yeah. So I was raised outside of Washington, D.C. on the Virginia side. So interestingly, growing up in that culture, you either love politics or you say you're never going to get involved in it. Definitely by the time I graduated, I said, I am so tired of the first question people ask, how much do you make, and are you Democrat or Republican? I got to get out of here. So I'm a little surprised that I have entered a political race now. But I grew up really in a pretty interesting situation, because that part of the United States being so, it's a suburb of Washington, D.C. My dad worked at the Pentagon my entire life.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up playing hide and seek in between the D&E ring and the Pentagon on Saturday mornings.
That's a cool experience, though. That's incredible.
I didn't think it was cool, because the Pentagon's kind of a dingy old office building, but it is a cool experience. And, I grew up with a bunch of congressional and senatorial kids, and then, lots of ambassadors' kids. And so a very international and very diverse scene growing up. And I really took for granted that part of my upbringing, because I really thought everybody went to school with people who had different accents, and lots of E&L students, lots of people from different countries that I may not have ever heard of before I met them. And that was really a gift to me, being able to grow up in that setting, and hearing about all of these issues all of the time. I remember driving around in my mom's station wagon and hearing about the Iran-Contra affair and then meeting Ollie North's kids, right?
Got to be kind of surreal.
It was totally surreal. And then, in college, actually, my one foray back into politics was running a campaign against Oliver North, who was running to represent our state. So I grew up in a pretty unique situation, and really a gift to have that kind of immersion into our national political culture, but also the culture of many, many different people. And then I went to school down in the mountains of Virginia at Randolph-Macon Women's College, and that was it was a great experience for me for a number of reasons. But first of all, I never thought I'd be somebody who'd want to go to a women's college, and I got an incredible education. It was really unmatched, and a lot of ability to do independent studies and really follow my path. I triple majored in sociology, anthropology, and women's studies, and then studied some math as well. So I sort of like dabbling in many things.
Yeah, you had a full slate.
That's right. And again, I sort of didn't know exactly where that was going to land me. But my life has always sort of turned out to be, the next step unfolds. And so I really thought that the director of that Habitat affiliate was kidding when he told me, I had been volunteering there since my freshman year. And by my senior year, I was volunteering more than 40 hours a week. And so the director said, "Why do you want to go to grad school? Why don't you just stay here and we'll give you $40 a week and find you a place to stay?" And I went home and I was like, wow, that would be so cool. And so I went back the next day and I said, "Kevin, were you kidding? Would you do that?" And he said, "Well, yeah, but you wouldn't do that, would you?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I would." So, that's how I got into Habitat. And my parents, I think for 5 or 10 years, asked me when I was going to get a real job. And then they finally decided, well, okay, she's doing her thing. This is her real job.
That's funny. My oldest sister, her first job was International Justice Mission in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was her first foray right out. She was a psych major going into nonprofit, really just helpful, good work that is needed. But I don't know if my parents ever made that same joke with her. I don't know. I'll have to ask them if they did or not. So when you made, I don't know if I asked, when you made the bike ride through Bloomington and when you came back for that, the interview, you were here for 2 days.
Yeah.
What was it that made you say like, oh, I want to end up back here?
Oh boy. It's really hard to put your finger on. But I could sense that the community was really exceptional in a way that was really high trust. So people in the community trusted one another. This affiliate, the Habitat affiliate here, was doing really, really great work. They had homeowners on the board, which doesn't sound so radical, but it is. To take somebody who has been probably their entire life living in poverty and has probably never thought about being on a nonprofit board. Being on a board of directors is really something that most people, you have a lot of privilege if you get asked to do that. And having an affiliate so committed to the voices and the votes of people with lived experience who have made their way out of poverty it was just a very different level of commitment to what we were doing. And on my interview team, I've never eaten so much since this is a food podcast. I should mention that every single part of my interview, I went to breakfast and then I had 2 coffees, each with pastries. Then I would go to lunch and then I would have another coffee and then we'd have dessert. And then, it was like everything was centered around eating. So I knew I was going to be fed really well here.
It's very key when you're deciding where to live. Yeah,
that's right. But I think there were 4 different homeowners who opened their homes and interviewed me.
Wow.
So they were part of the interview process, and again, the community is spectacularly beautiful, not only in its built environment, but also in its human connection.
Yeah, that's I love that back to the homeowner thing, because it's just like, who better knows what a organization should do when that same organization has helped them, like,
absolutely.
And just to be so invested and just like know how important the work is, and
right.
never lose sight of that, because meetings can draw out sometimes and you're just like, okay, I want to go. I think they probably have a little bit different perspective, since that helped put a roof over their head, or maybe help them find a way out of poverty.
That's right.
That's awesome to hear. Don't miss Constellation Stage and Screen's family holiday show, Matilda the Musical, on stage December 14th through 31st at the Buskirk Chumley Theater. From the visionary mind of Roald Dahl comes the Tony Award-winning Matilda the Musical. Packed with high-energy dance numbers and astonishing stage magic, children and adults alike will be thrilled and delighted by the story of an extraordinary little girl. See Roald Dahl's Matilda the Musical on stage December 14th through 31st in downtown Bloomington. Find tickets at cconstellation.org.
Yeah.
I know I've jumped around a little bit. When you took the position at the Center for Rural Engagement, did it come to the point where you start having people being like, hey, this mayoral race is coming up, I think you would be a great candidate? I'm sure it probably started with some friends chirping in your ear, and then you had to put a lot of thought into it and talk with your husband and your family, and finally came to the realization it made sense?
Yes, that started actually before I left Habitat, that chirping in my ear. And I kept saying no. And I kept, saying, well, if there's somebody else who's qualified, I think that should be the path forward. Because I really, I loved working with Habitat. I've loved working at the Center for Rural Engagement. And so I wasn't looking for something different. And it finally just got to be to the point where I thought, well, I don't have to be mayor. I can kind of lead from the side and try to bring people together. And ultimately, that was what got me to run. Was I kept seeing in our public discourse, not only in the comment section, and that's been happening for a long time, but even in our public meetings, people would, if you disagreed with me, I would call you a name, right?
Yeah.
And then Jordan would be out. And it doesn't matter, if it's another topic, you still can't be on my team.
Right.
And so as I got more involved in these public meetings, especially with our Unified Development Ordinance, and really believing that we didn't have to do this or this, we could look at the whole field and see some possibilities that maybe nobody had considered, but we have to listen to both of these sides first. And I finally realized, no, you actually probably have to run, because this has gotten so entrenched now that we have to set a different culture in our public discourse. And we have to lead by example, and we have to do some projects that genuinely invite people to the table, even when they disagree, especially when they disagree, to improve our ideas.
Well, I know, back to Visit Bloomington, one of the things that we've been constantly updated on board meetings has been the convention center expansion. Yeah. And you're like, please don't make me talk about that.
Has it been about the same update for the last 5 years? And
yeah, well, finally we've got the some progress being made with everyone getting appointed, and so that's very encouraging. But I really do love to hear that viewpoint, because I feel like everything, not that anyone wants to hear more what I think on this stuff, but everything's just gotten so divisive, and nationally, locally, every way, where just because someone doesn't agree with you on one thing, because I have this happen in friends groups where they're like, you still talk to so-and-so,
right,
like they think this, and it's like, but like we're never going to be able to move forward, because at the end of the day, when you talk to most people, a lot of us want the same things.
Exactly.
We just might disagree on how to get there. So it's I don't know. You can't make any progress if you just cut everybody off and negate anything they have to say because you just have one disagreement. So I really appreciate you saying that, because I firmly believe that as well. But thank you for taking that. I guess I don't want to know if it's a sacrifice, but just realizing like, okay, if nobody's going to do this, and this is what I think needs to be done. I feel like that takes a lot of, that's a big move. I mean, because that's like you said, you have 2 dogs, 4 kids, and a husband. Like, I'm sure you've got a lot of other things you'd probably like to be doing.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that, as it turns out, there's nothing that I enjoy more, at least, as far as I can tell, what mayor is going to be like. I have not experienced anything that I'd rather be doing, because people really are already showing up and saying, hey, I've had this idea for a while. I haven't really known who to give it to, but do you think we could do something like this? And I'm really excited to see what we can do together. And I realized that I was the one nominated. I hope I was nominated because people know I'm going to invite them to the table, not just to talk, but to actually do.
Right.
And I am going to need people that will show up and do their part, because I'm one person, and there's nobody, I don't care who they are, there is nobody who can get everything done that needs to be done.
Right.
And so what I really want to do is build the room big enough so that people can offer their ideas and their hands to getting things done.
So one of the things that really affects us at the Moose, and I know you're leaving to go tomorrow to DC for Built for Zero, which is I'll let you explain a little bit, that we're the first city in Indiana to commit to this.
Yeah, so we're the first to sign on to Built for Zero, and that means that our community has committed to creating a plan to essentially create a path for zero homelessness. So that means that we will have a housing path for everyone who needs it. And this is really one of the most critical things in our community right now. And I think that we see it in a lot of different ways. Business owners are experiencing people who don't have what they need, and who are really in crisis levels of mental health experiences and substance use. And certainly, I want to live in a city that has a path, that has opportunities for everybody to be able to improve their health and improve their situation to the best of their ability. And that does start with housing. That's called the Housing First model. Right. That it's really hard to build on your stability overall if you don't have a safe place to sleep at night. But that's going to be just the first part of this, is the housing piece, because we really need a path where we have the opportunities for people to continue to improve their lives to the top of their license. And what that will mean is that they'll offer their gifts back to our community, right, in whatever the way they're able, and that our community can really live into who I think Bloomington really is, which is a community that cares, and a community that really wants to thrive. And we can't do that if we look out on the streets and say, wow, there are a lot of people who are in such crisis right now.
Yeah, man, it's so tough just balancing. It's very sad, because we're kind of right in the heart of it out at our South Walnut location.
Yeah, I know you are.
Try to be, as helpful as we can. And there's so many great individuals that you can tell have been dealt a raw hand, and so you want to be as helpful as possible. And then you have other people that maybe aren't as respectful about using the restrooms. And it's just that tug of like, how can we help, but also still have a good experience for our customers so we can be a good thriving business that keeps people employed,
That's right.
And it just seems like, whatever might currently be going on isn't really working. So it seems like you have some ideas of what might be able to be implemented, and maybe Housing First isn't something that has had enough funding yet, or there's other ideas that haven't been implemented yet. So I'm excited to see what those are. Is Hopewell going to have anything to do with helping provide affordable housing, the Hopewell project, or is that a whole different project?
So Hopewell has been outlined to help with some affordable housing. Hopewell has a master plan, and it's just got the RFQs out now. Well, they've been out for a while. But that is just a request for qualifications. So it means that we're looking for the developers who are qualified to do this. It's not a commitment to create the housing. But it is sort of our largest opportunity downtown to provide a lot of housing. The vision for that, though, is mixed income housing, and so we'll need some housing first in our community. We also will need what is technically affordable housing. So this is always housing that has some kind of subsidy provided. Then we're going to need a lot of what frequently people call workforce housing. So these are people who are working, and they probably are making a decent amount of money, but they still can't afford what we're charging in Bloomington because our wages don't match our housing costs.
Right.
And so, just to be clear, I think our workforce doesn't want to live with a bunch of undergraduates.
Right.
And so we need to look at how people live, how they want to live. If I have to show up at a job at 8 a.m., I can't be awake at 2 a.m., right?
Yeah, I see it. I mean, we're at Urban Station above us. They have
Yes.
workforce housing, and I have friends that are in those workforce apartments in Urban Station. And yeah, they're surrounded by kids partying. And
That's right.
I've never heard someone bring that up about like, hey, like it's a good idea on paper, but when you really think about it, yeah, these totally different schedules and goals
Yeah.
of what they're getting out of their living experience.
Yeah. And I think that, we need to look at not only where people are living when they're 25, but also where they want to hang out when
Yeah.
they're 25, because we're missing that segment of our population. People graduate, and unless they get married or, otherwise attach somehow, they frequently will move away, even if they are attached somehow, because they can't afford the real estate here. And there's other factors too, but we want to be so magnetic and attractive with things to do and a lifestyle that really works for that age group that they go, well, I've got to stay in Bloomington because it's just that great.
Right.
Right. So we want to look at those things. And I think it's really important that when we're looking at housing first, it's not housing last. It's not housing and then we're done. It has to be housing with the partnership to encourage you and to give you the opportunities to really move up the ladder to the very top of your license, and the partnership and belief that you can. And I think our community needs some principles by which we're going to agree to operate. I want you to be able to live with dignity. I also need to be able to run my business with dignity.
Right.
And so these are the ways that we are going to participate in community together.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly hard to get your shit together, excuse my language, if you don't have a house, if you don't have housing, but you can't just give someone a house if you can't address mental health issues. I mean, is there anything that you think could have been done up until this point that hasn't been done that right, if you get in like right away, like these are things that we want to implement that you think might be able to be maybe not game changers because it's a very complex issue, but where you're like, oh, the budget, as we've been severely underfunded on mental health services. Is there anything that you kind of know right now already that can be changed that you think might make a big difference?
If there was a silver bullet, it would have already been done, and it would have been done either here or somewhere else. Nobody has solved this issue yet.
Right.
I think, though, Bloomington is uniquely poised to do it because we're a small enough community with a big enough problem that we can pilot some things. We can bring the coalition of leaders together that are already focused on this and agree on a path that we're going to work on together. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to play by exactly the same methodologies. We need people serving different niches of people. But if we agree on some principles moving forward and what our target is, then I think that we can create a plan together. And if parts of it don't work, we can tweak it.
Yeah.
We can really treat it as a pilot. And in that way, we could move boldly forward instead of saying, well, we don't have any evidence that this is going to work. People keep looking for evidence that something's going to work. The street drugs are changing so fast that if you're targeting one specific way of life and one particular symptomology, you're going to miss the boat because the drug's going to change.
Yeah.
And, the mental health is, we're way behind the ball on mental health. So we have to start piloting a bold plan that has community support. And then we have to be courageous enough to say, all right, we got 80% of it right. This 20% definitely isn't working. Let's figure out how to fix that part.
I really appreciate your passion on it. It just means so much to everyone in the community. I could tell it means a lot to you. I mean, you've dealt with it, just housing. It's just that core principle of housing. So that's great. Thank you for diving into that. And hopefully we can just all work together to figure it out. Cause I feel like all of us, we go around like, how can we not just figure this out? There's gotta be money and resources. And if we all work together towards getting it taken care of, everyone can be, these people can live more prosperous lives, and everyone in the community can be just really proud of Bloomington and what it is.
Absolutely.
Even more so than we already are.
Absolutely. And I think, we could be really proud of ourselves if we solve this problem.
Yeah.
And, for anybody listening out there that thinks they have a crazy idea, I want to reassure them that I would like to hear it. I have gotten, at our listening session on Saturday, actually the very first homeowner, the Habitat homeowner that I worked with in Bloomington came to the listening session. She came with 3 pages of notes with solutions that she's thought of.
Wow.
For our community. And yes, some of them were crazy and some of them were phenomenally good. And if you just have the courage to think out of the box, and sort of surprisingly, I then got an email that night from somebody not at the listening session, an accountant in town, who said, all right, I have a harebrained idea, but I've just got to put it on paper. And I read it and I thought, this is actually a phenomenal idea.
Awesome.
And so we need people courageous enough to step forward and say, what if we tried this? Because what if we did?
Yeah. Well, and if it's a lot easier to complain than come up with solutions. So take that energy in the comments section and try to help come up with solutions.
Absolutely. And we're not going to implement any truly harebrained idea. But what that does is it gives us something to offer to the community and say, help us improve this. Here's a starting point.
Yeah.
Right?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about food more.
Okay, great.
You're like what I was promised when I came here. When you first came down to town, you talked about Laughing Planet. Do you have any places that you really enjoyed in Bloomington that maybe aren't around anymore?
Oh, wow.
I know. It's always a tough one.
Now I have to remember them all. There was a really good Asian fusion place on 4th Street, and I can't remember the name, but I miss that place a lot. I already miss Bloomington. I don't know. I've heard that they may be reopening.
So they've got, I'm the guy to ask. I got answers for you.
Great.
So they actually started a food truck called Little Bowl, which has been participating in. Yeah.
Okay.
So Peanut and Joy, they're both amazing people. They make amazing food.
Yeah.
And they will be reopening on 4th Street in the Anatolia building.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Okay.
But yeah, it was sad when you first had that news. They're closing on the square. I'd been several times. I was like, well, that stinks. I feel like they just got open, and I just started getting them in my routine,
Right. Yeah. And I don't know how far back you go, but the Loaf and Ladle that was up on the square, that was an incredible place.
That's before Garrett. Do you know?
Soup and Bread. Yeah, it was where Max's Pizza eventually went. Speaking of which, Max's was a great place.
Yeah, old Max's place. Absolutely.
That's Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of places I miss, and there's some treasures that have been around the entire time. One of my first interview spots was the Uptown, and my daughter now works there, and so
nice.
That encourages me to go in there more often.
Check in, see how she's doing.
That's right.
See how Michael and Galen are holding up.
Runcible Spoon also was one of my early spots, and still like it there. Although I really miss their whole grain pancakes.
Oh man,
I used to have whole grain pancakes.
I don't know if I ever had. I love it. I think they have the best pancakes in town. I didn't know about the whole grain.
Yeah.
See, I get. It stinks. Obviously, they don't have them, but every now and then I'll have guests come on and they tell me about something I know about, no idea about, that I can still go order. I'm like, okay, well, we're wrapping up. Garrett and I are hungry. We're gonna go grab this right now. What are before I want to talk about the spoon too? What are what's your favorite thing at Uptown?
My favorite thing at Uptown?
Yeah, favorite dish.
Oh boy. Well, hands down is probably their crab cake.
Yeah,
because they're the only people in town with a real crab cake.
Not all filler and breadcrumb.
And coming from the part of the world that I come from, crab is king over there. So yeah, at Uptown, I'd have to say the crab cake.
Okay. What about the spoon now that the multigrain's gone? Do you have another go-to?
Yeah, their spoon chicken is really good for dinner, but I also like the bon femme omelet. But I don't really like ham, so I usually have a vegetarian bon femme, which is weird, I know.
It's fine. You do
it's
you.
It's really good.
You're the one eating it. Order what you want,
That's right.
What about if you're doing pizza night with the family?
Pizza night with the family. So I mentioned that we have 4 kids. We have had 5 kids in the past. We were foster parents.
Oh, wow.
But we're currently not fostering because we have a lot on our plates. But pizza night's always a discussion for us. So we were on a big Pizza X kick, and then we throw in some Avers from time to time, and then Mother Bears, of course, for the win on the deep dish.
Absolutely. You're spreading the love around.
We're sort of all over the place with pizza.
We got 6 mouths to feed. Not everyone's going to have the same taste. And
that's right.
I mean, I grew up on Papa John's in Indy, and I still every now and then, you know what I mean? I still don't like it as much as the other ones, but every now and then I'm like, you know what? I want that nostalgic taste. And
it's the garlic sauce.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah,
hopefully I didn't lose all food cred now that I've outed myself on liking Papa John's.
Well, when you have 3 great pizza places in town, why choose one? Right? It's good to rotate them.
Well, and I mean, some people, I guess, would say that Papa John's or Domino's. Is there still Domino's?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's still Domino's, yeah. Little Caesars, my son is sad that Little Caesars is no longer. Yeah. I'm not, though.
Yeah. I had, we did on Saturday, we did a trade. I've been having almost our entire staff at the Walnut Stores, IU students, speaking of using our resource, and they're amazing. But I've been having issues getting people to want to work Saturday nights because they don't want to work on a Saturday night. They want to go have fun. They're college students. So we were, I was in there working with them, and I was like, you know what? We need to do, let's do a food trade. So we'll call up another local restaurant, be like, hey, do you guys want ice cream? We want savory, hot food. Let's swap.
Yeah.
So we called Cafe Pizzeria.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't know why. I do a radio show with Mike Glascott on WFHB every week, and we talked about it today. I'm like, I always forget about Cafe Pizzeria. But every time I have it, I'm just so filled with regret that I don't get it more often. Have you?
That's so funny. Yeah, I don't have regret about Cafe Pizzeria necessarily. Although there are an untold number of people who have this sentimental connection to Cafe Pizzeria.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, very loyal. I'll tell you, this is a hysterical food story. On that first Habitat interview, I'm eating all the time. We went to Lenny's, and they had pistachio cheesecake. Have you ever been to Lenny's when they have pistachio cheesecake?
I have not, but obviously we're back at old location off of 10th Street.
Old location off of 10th Street. Okay, so everybody I've ever talked to also has never had Lenny's pistachio cheesecake. And my husband and I try to have date night once a week, and we don't usually go to Lenny's for that. But we were there probably within the last 6 months. And every time I'm there, I ask, what's your cheesecake? And I've never ordered cheesecake since, because that pistachio cheesecake is like cemented in my brain. And so just 6 months ago, so this is like 25 years after I originally had it, they said, it's pistachio. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Like, how many slices do you have? I need them all boxed up.
I need the whole thing. And my husband was blown away. And of course he tasted it. And he was like, this is amazing.
So it lived up 25 years later.
Oh, totally. Totally lived up.
Well, props to, I don't know if Michael and Sammy had bought it at that point, but they just.
No, they didn't own it yet, but I need to
Okay.
tell them that the pistachio cheesecake is the bomb.
We'll clip this out and tag them, and they'll have no choice. Be like, bring back pistachio.
That's right. It must still be in their rotation. It's just that not frequently enough for me.
Do you have some lunch spots that are kind of regularly in the rotation when you're in your busy work day and you need to go out and get a lunch downtown? Or
I do. I love the Blooming Foods salad bar. If I'm just like going quick and I want a salad, that's unmatched. That Beef Foods salad bar. I hate to double tag anybody, but there are two salads that I love on the Kirkwood Strip. The ahi tuna salad at Lenny's. It's really phenomenal. Have you had it?
I don't believe so.
It has
Actually, I know.
mango and plantains.
I've seen
It's
pictures. I
super
feel like
good.
they posted it. It's very visually appealing.
It
but I don't
is.
know if I've ever dove in.
It's really good. And then the mesclun salad with salmon up at the Uptown is really good. Also, their salmon wrap is phenomenal.
I've had that one because that's like off menu, I think. I don't know.
No, I think it's on the menu
Is it?
now.
'Cause
Yeah.
I swore like it was like, oh, you just have to know to order it. And so I never look at the menu because I call in my order now.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll be like, yeah, just give me a salmon wrap.
Yeah.
I think it was Sadie that turned me on to that. So she used to be the director of operations for the Endeavor Wow group.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
she
Yeah.
left a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But she's the one that started the Bloomington Foodies Facebook page.
Oh, I love that Facebook page.
Yeah, so that's how I started writing food reviews, because she did a local restaurant bingo to help support local restaurants at the beginning of the pandemic.
Nice. Yes.
I eat out every meal because I work so much and I don't like doing dishes. So boom, here we are.
No dishes. Got it.
And people enjoyed the reviews, like, you should start a podcast. So I owe Sadie for pretty much all of this and the salmon wrap.
That's awesome.
Yeah, shout out. Thank you, Sadie. Appreciate you. Give you your flowers
That's
today.
Okay, so we also should give a shout out to Taste of India's buffet.
Oh.
Right?
We were talking about Mike visit Bloomington. Him and I had
Whoa.
one of our last meetings there. And
Yeah.
I think it's like $13.50, but it's worth every penny.
It is. And then shame on me, but I didn't know that both Inkwells have like full breakfast.
Oh.
And
I love Inkwell so much.
oh my gosh, their loaded avocado toast, best in town.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I'm
really good.
Usually I'm really good at about branching out.
Yeah.
But like I found that their broken yolk sandwich and the weekly, the broken yolk is like a chipotle mayo, house made sourdough.
I had it this morning.
You're like, please, Jordan, I know.
Come on, I know the broken yolk.
You're like, what do you take me for, dude? So for the listeners that might not know, the broken yolk and the weekly, which is like the scrambled eggs with the horseradish on the homemade pretzel bun.
Okay, I thought they changed the weekly.
Did they?
I mean, I thought it changed weekly.
Oh.
I really did.
No. It's always the weekly it's just called the weekly. I think it's so good.
Why do they call it the weekly then?
I think because it's so good, you want to order it once every week. Maybe. I don't know. We had Wally on before we ever added video. I need to get him reach out.
I'm going to talk to Wally and see if he can just have a weekly special.
Yeah. You're like, hey, this is deceptive marketing. And
I
you're
know.
Like, one of the first things I'm going to do is cut down on this. Like, I've been avoiding. I've been looking. I was like, man, they've been really
There's
slacking.
an executive order. The Inkwell must have a weekly special.
That's, you know what? I would actually back that. Maybe not that, but that everywhere needs to do a weekly special.
Yeah.
Because I get every time somewhere like just run something different that's off menu, I order it almost always.
Yeah.
Because it's just like if you eat out as much as I do, which is fairly frequent, that like I just want something new and fun. So if you're running specials, that's got my backing.
Right. Okay.
If there's a city council meeting, I'll come make public comment on it.
There is most every Wednesday.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. It's like don't show up for any of the important things. Season 5 of the No Dishes podcast is brought to you by visitbloomington.com. Visit Bloomington.com is the best resource for restaurant and culinary information, special events, fun activities, places to stay, and more in our area. We share a similar mission here on the No Dishes podcast of highlighting local businesses and the people who make our community unique. We can't thank them enough for hopping on board. Check them out at visitbloomington.com to easily plan your next meal, visit, or night out on the town. Is there anywhere we didn't get a touch on that you feel like we need to show some love? I know what happens is every time we have someone on, they message me an hour later like, dude, I forgot about this place and this place and this place. So
you want to know about more places? Well, the one I don't want to give a shout out to because it's small and I really like it, but I will, is Feast Market and Cellar.
Yeah. Oh, Eric's coming on next week.
Oh, he is. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, they have such a limited number of tables that I hesitate to mention how much I love it there, but it's really hard to order anything bad there.
Yeah.
In fact, we have a saying in our house that shall not be repeated, but like everything there is great or totally amazing.
Yeah, I've never had a bad meal there.
It's Eric's
Did I miss
really
what
creative.
The saying actually is? I think Garrett picked up on it.
Yeah,
it might take an acute imagination to figure out.
That's right.
Change
I'm not
of words
imaginative
there.
enough.
That's right.
No, Eric did the chef's challenge, and he's won it before, and I got fortunate enough to be asked to be a judge on it. And just watching him and Dan Thomas from Elm and Corbin Morwick from One World, just so many talented chefs here in Bloomington.
Oh, we're so fortunate. Yeah. And, it's funny because I like Eric's creativity so much that we do have a standard. My husband and I frequently, I won't say always, but frequently we will order a large pepita salad and then whatever the flatbread is. Because he just, he puts all kinds of crazy stuff on there.
Yeah.
And it tastes amazing. And talk about a weekly special.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they've been,
different every time.
Ever since they were even at Hillside and Henderson.
Yes.
Is it Erica and Jennifer, I think were the two sisters. I
don't know.
Yeah, but they opened up that one, and anyway, they've always just been so good. It's so it's weird how they're able to keep this theme where it's almost like everything's rustic.
Yeah,
I feel like that's probably the best way to describe it. And they're always using whole grain mustard seeds and just he has a style, Eric does, and Feast has for a long time, and maybe he adopted that and has really ran with it. Mm-hmm. But even in that chef's challenge, everything he made, I felt like I was at Feast.
That's awesome.
But yeah, baked goods. I've never had a bad meal there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time coming on here, talking food, talking shop.
Thanks for having me.
Shout out to Allison for teeing this up.
Allison's amazing.
We're having Jay on as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. He was one of the speakers at the Combine a few years back.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I was like, this guy's awesome.
Yeah,
and
he's really phenomenal.
When Allison reached out about the ice cream social, it was so funny. I just met with Garrett the day before. I was like, dude, I think it'd be really cool to have Kerry on and Jay on. And then Allison reached out. I'm like, oh, hey, you're exactly what I need to talk to for two people. I was like, this was meant to be.
That's right.
All right. Well, hopefully we can keep up our chocolate mousse work with Habitat. Really excited to see everything that you and your administration do. And I can't thank you enough for the time.
Thank you so much. Really, it was fun to be on.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. What another great episode. Thanks again to Visit Bloomington for being our Season 5 title sponsor. If you haven't checked them out yet, go to visitbloomington.com. This episode of the No Dishes podcast was recorded, edited, and produced by Garrett Portinga of Green Hat Media in beautiful downtown Bloomington, Indiana.
No dishes.
No Dishes Media.
No Dishes Media.